Welcome to another episode of Procurement Pulse. Today with us, Ricky, the co-founder of SourceReady. Hey, Ricky.
Hey, Friddy, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for joining.
Of course, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on today. I think your background and what you're doing in supply chain fits fantastically to our podcast, and I think you can provide a lot of value to our listeners. So I'm excited to have you on, talk a little bit about what you're doing at SourceReady, talk a little bit about your background, and then kind of see where that takes us.
Yeah, awesome.
Perfect. So you started SourceReady in 24, about a year and a half ago. Tell me a little bit more about SourceReady. What's the idea behind it, and kind of what made you go create the company?
Yeah, so I've been working in supply chain and tech for over 8 years. I actually started another company before SourceReady called Tree Lab, and we were basically helping large retailers and brands better create supply chain visibility by using our system to better help retailers collaborate with their suppliers. So I did that for 4.5 years, and what I ended up realizing is that at a lot of these large organizations, there's a lot of these ERP and procurement systems that they use, but day to day, a lot of their time is still spent on email, Excel, and kind of these legacy processes. And I think there's just so much opportunity in supply chain and procurement to leverage AI to automate a lot of this workflow. So I come from a background of manufacturing as well. So my family were also a manufacturer. I grew up kind of in this supply chain and manufacturing environment. I studied industrial engineering at UC Berkeley. So also kind of did schooling in this space. So kind of my whole life has been around the supply chain industry. And I think what really gets me excited is the possibilities that AI kind of unlocks. So a lot of supply chain processes are very unstructured and hard to automate because it requires so much experience. And I think AI kind of really helps bridge the gap by kind of allowing kind of these more traditionally not standardized processes to be automatable with AI. And at SourceReady, I think sourcing is a very interesting part of supply chain that traditionally, even at very large organizations, there really isn't any system. A lot of it is through industry relationships, networks, finding a supplier at a trade show. So I think there's just so much possibility here. And I think second of all, I think the tariff situation already showed us how fragile the supply chain is today. So I think like the China diversification is something that will happen. And as more and more kind of supply chain professionals look for suppliers outside of China, I think, I think there is a lack of a search engine in this space to help find suppliers globally. So Alibaba is the website that everyone knows where you can search for suppliers. But if you think about it, most of the world's factories are not visible on any directory. So if I wanted to find a supplier in, I don't know, in South Korea or in Vietnam, these countries don't have platforms like Alibaba. And as a result, finding manufacturers in those countries oftentimes is very difficult, or at least difficult to do digitally. A lot of it is you have to ask people like, hey, do you know any suppliers in this region? So I think AI unlocks a lot of that because we can aggregate a lot of this traditionally hard to aggregate data. So customs data. How do we leverage data from trade shows? How do we leverage data from Dun& and Bradstreet? How do we leverage data from governments? And how do we merge all this data in a user experience that allows non-professional, like non-techies, to just describe what they want and have AI do the bulk of the work of searching through the world's factories and providing that information.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Obviously, AI is the buzzword for the last 2 years probably by now, and some of it feels hard to grasp, right? It's always kind of like this. Okay, it's gonna be great one day, but what can it actually do for me in the day to day, right? And I think what you describe, what really AI is really good at is analyzing data, big data
Yep.
sets, right? And that's what it has been good at for honestly quite some time, right? I mean, algorithms and forecasting models have been existed in niche tools in supply chain for quite some time, and I think
Yep.
the larger of application of AI, right? That's what we get often asked about. It's like, okay, is AI going to take my job? What can AI do, right? And I think your example is a prime example of where AI can just enhance capabilities of strategic sourcing professionals.
Yep.
It's not replacing them. It just
Yep.
gives them another tool to access data more user friendly, right? It just speeds up the process. It doesn't make decisions. It doesn't take over responsibilities.
Yep.
It's a tool that lets you access data that wasn't accessible before, and it can do so in whatever way you ask it to do, right? And that's, I think, the other thing I like about AI and data, and I just used that myself yesterday. I have a Google Notebook,
Yep.
and right, there's a lot of my data is in Google Notebook, and I can just ask it, hey, present this data to me in a certain way. Where
Yep.
before you had to kind of do pivot tables or complicated
Yep.
Excel tables, right? But AI, you can naturally talk to AI, right? And I'm assuming SourceReady can do the same. I can naturally talk to SourceReady
Yep.
and say, this is what I need, this is where I need it to
Yep.
be, and this is what I'm looking for. And then it can interpret that and spit out results.
You captured it exactly. So I think we're actually very lucky that AI are good at things that humans don't like to do and aren't good at. And the things that humans are good at, I believe, will never be able to do. So there's a very complementary relationship. So I'll give an example. So today, if you were to go to a supplier directory, like let's say you go to Alibaba, and I show you a list of 1,000 factories. As a human, it's very hard for you to remember 1,000 factories in your head, right? If I give you 1,000 profiles and say, okay, based on those 1,000 profiles, I want you to rank which suppliers out of this 1,000 are the top five most fit and give me a reason for each 1,000. You could probably do it, but it will take you maybe a week or 2 weeks to go through every single 1,000, all 1,000 suppliers. And this is why a lot of times sourcing is a luck game. So without AI, a lot of times, like the supplier you work with, you just happen to find it at some trade show or some relationship. But maybe there's a better supplier somewhere that you never got the chance to know. And even if you did find their information, you wouldn't have the time to vet them. So this is a use case where AI can look at millions of supplier profiles and provide reasoning in a matter of minutes that would take humans weeks, if not months, to go through all that information. So that's number one. But what's AI not good at is AI is good at summarization, right? It can provide kind of contextual evidence and say, hey, I think this supplier is a good match for you because of A, B, and C. Decision making is more nuanced than that. You might have additional follow-ups. You might have business specific needs that you need to tell the AI to say, okay, no, I need you to analyze it from this perspective. And that's something AI will never do because it doesn't have your business context. And even if it does have that ability, we would never give AI that permission because the stakes are too high. Choosing the wrong supplier, purchasing the wrong product could be millions of dollars of losses. And I don't think any business owner is going to, make that decision to the AI. So I think what AI does allow people to do is to 10x or even x your productivity in certain areas. And I think the areas that I feel most exciting are areas that are very, as you mentioned, data heavy, areas where a lot of times you have to look at large volumes of data. And a lot of this data is unstructured. It's not even structured data, which makes it even harder traditionally to look at. And then I would say the second part that I find very interesting is there's a joke where it's like the world's most of the world's valuable supply chain data is in email and WeChat and WhatsApp. So if you think about like how sourcing is actually done, it's actually more of a conversation and less of a what we think about an ERP like a form, right? The ERP and these systems are just recording the result of that conversation. So when you negotiate a price, for example, typically there's a back and forth between you and the supplier. You tell the supplier, hey, we need this product. What is your price? What are your payment terms? Can you do this material in this way? What are your lead times, right? And imagine doing this 10 times across 10 suppliers because you want to compare different results. This is all unstructured conversations. Like
Nothing gets
if you,
captured in the actual ERP system. The ERP system only has the final end result, but none of the process.
Exactly. Exactly. And if you think about like what's actually more important, I would say the process of negotiating the right result is actually has a higher business impact than just recording the final result, right? Because like as I negotiate with supplier A, I want the AI to pull up every single negotiation I've done with the supplier in the past. I want the AI to pull up all the other conversations I'm having with other suppliers. And I want the AI to, for example, help me summarize this 15 long email chain that otherwise I might miss some details, right? So I think this is a perfect scenario where this is a use case where AI is just going to make you a superhuman, make you much better at negotiating, make you much better at doing complex sourcing across many regions and suppliers. And obviously, as you know, supply chain is very global. There's different time zones, different languages, oftentimes, and I think what AI can be good at is like as you're sleeping, the AI can be doing follow-ups for you, right? Let's say you need the vendor to provide pricing. You send them an email. By the time they reply, you're sleeping, and there's this back and forth wastes 5 days. Instead of that, you tell the AI beforehand all of the information that you need from the supplier. And as you're sleeping, the AI is talking to the supplier, trying to collect this information. Obviously, it's not going to make decisions for you. It's not going to tell the supplier yes or no, but it's going to act like an assistant to continuously follow up so that you can shorten that 5-day conversation window into a 2-day window. And that is a huge time saver.
Yeah, I agree. And I think historically, right, it's been what they call themselves, these purchasing agents, or these agents that lived in Asia, right? I know when I
Yes.
was working in supply chain, you had these guys that kind of just traveled through Vietnam, traveled through
Yep.
Asia, visit factories, and they would have all that knowledge about those vendors. And you would go to them, they would get a commission, right? For every
Yep.
piece you buy from the vendor, they would get a commission piece, and they would have basically a book of vendors for you, because like you said, there is no Alibaba in most countries, right? So
Yep.
the only way to find those vendors a lot of times is to be on the ground and kind
Mm-hmm.
of tour them, and then word to mouth, you learn about more and more, and eventually you end up with some of those
Yeah.
um, organizations and procurement agents that would have that knowledge, right? And they would sell it for a price, obviously, right? So everything
Yes.
would have a markup on it. If you wanted to get that information, if you wanted to work with those vendors, they were basically the gatekeepers of those vendors.
Exactly.
And right, you had to trust them at the same time, right? They could give you, if they knew they had a higher commission with one vendor,
Yep.
they could steer you whichever way they wanted to, because right, they
Yep.
might have known, hey, there's vendor A and vendor B. Vendor
Mm-hmm.
A has better quality, better pricing, but I get a higher commission with vendor B. Well, they're going to send you to vendor B.
Yes, exactly.
So I think having that information and having AI do some of just right, it's just getting in touch with those vendors. I think the vendor qualification part, right, especially for high volume products, you're still going to have somebody who's going to go over there, meet with them, look at the
Yep.
production capabilities, approve the parts, right? It's a whole process, but just the ability to find them and know they even exist, I think, is the part that was never there before. And I think that's really really exciting. So how many, do you have an idea how many vendors do you currently have in your system, and do you target specific industries, or is it across all industries?
Yeah, so we have 1.4 million supplier profiles in our system, and this index is constantly growing. So we've indexed, I would say, most suppliers that have any import export data our system would capture, right? Because basically we get customs data from over 80 different countries. So even if this supplier has no website, no publicly searchable information in our system, we will still capture some amount of signal from the data sources that we collect. And then on top of it, obviously, because we're a search engine, we also collect data from Alibaba, from global sources, from Made in China, from these public directories. So we enrich our supplier profiles with, let's say that supplier does have an Alibaba page. We will kind of collect some information from that Alibaba profile. But I think what's more important is not just data collection, it's actually how do you do bias-free ranking and evaluation. So if you think about Alibaba and these directories, the way they make money is actually majority through supplier advertising. So 90% of Alibaba.com's revenue comes from supplier membership and advertising fees. And if you think about that, that's why, like, if you search like t-shirt on Alibaba, like the first page, a lot of these vendors are not even manufacturers or like trading companies, agents. And the question would be like, why would Alibaba put like a sourcing agent and not a manufacturer on page one? Well, because this agent paid a lot of money. They pay, millions of, hundreds of thousands of dollars per year to rank for that keyword. But if you think about sourcing, it's a very high stake decision. Like I don't want to click on this. I don't want to see the supplier just because they paid a lot of money to rank on the first page. I want to see the best supplier in the world that matches my exact requirements. And this is partially why like directories I think are outdated, because as I mentioned, the human mind has a very limited capacity of how much information you can process.
You're
So if I
not
go to
really going
Alibaba,
past page three, right? You're going
yeah,
to
you're
stay on
not
the
good.
first couple of pages, and if those pages are the pages that have been paid for, right,
Yes,
you have the same problem again, that
exactly.
you don't know what you don't know, and you see those first couple of pages, and you think,
Exactly.
okay. So let me ask you this then: how do you make money? How does SourceReady create revenue?
So we monetize the buyer, but we do have a free version. So because we want to, make sure the platform is not biased by the supplier actually doesn't even know their information is in our system. So we just index their data, right? Kind of like Google crawls every website in the world. Even if you don't want to be crawled, they will crawl you. So we do the same thing. And the buyer basically pays to get access to insights. So if you want to be able to like see detailed information about shipments on the supplier, you want to see AI summaries of the supplier, then you basically use credits in our system. And then you basically buy credits as you continue using it. And then we actually give you free credits every day. Just if you have some basic searches that you need to do, you don't even need to pay. But if you're doing kind of advanced sourcing, then you kind of pay a subscription to get access to the data and the search.
Okay. So walk me through it. I'm somebody, right, looking for a new manufacturer for, let's stick with t-shirts. For some reason, I want to buy t-shirts. So I go to your platform, I create an account, and I get a result for t-shirts, which I'm assuming, right? What's the next step? Do you have contact information there? How do I
Yeah.
get in touch with the vendor?
So the supplier, we collect phone numbers, emails of the supplier, and we collect this data through various sources as well. So we buy data from trade shows, for example. So if a supplier attended a trade show, they left their contact, we would get their data. And then the next step is we actually have a feature called AI inquiries. So instead of reaching out to these suppliers manually, calling each one or emailing each one, we can create an automated inquiry workflow where we integrate with your email and you put in the questions that you need to ask the suppliers. Let's say you have a specific product that you want to source, like a t-shirt, and I want to make 500 pieces of this. I need to understand, what is your price? What is your minimum order quantity? When can you deliver it? Right? I basically have like 8 questions I need to ask. You tell our AI beforehand, and then I can bulk invite, let's say, the top 50 vendors or even 100 vendors from the search result. And then the AI basically reaches out to each of these vendors and goes back and forth with each one, asks them the information that you need to ask, and then organizes all the answers in a way that very easily you can kind of structure and compare. Because traditionally, that's also the second problem. So, like you mentioned, most people don't go past page 3. But I'll tell you, most people don't even contact more than 10 suppliers. Most
Right.
3 or 4, maybe 5, because it's very, very time consuming messaging suppliers. And the more suppliers you add, the more noise you have, right? Like no one wants to be messaging 100 different suppliers. You can't even remember at that point
Right.
who is doing what is happening, right? And this is where AI really becomes a game changer, because instead of only reaching out to 5, you can reach out to 50, you can reach out to 100 if you wanted to. And in that case, it just increases the probability that you find a better supplier and a better deal. And as I mentioned, because you have AI to summarize and rank all these results, it's not just ranking the search results, it's also ranking the conversations, right? So as the AI is having these conversations with the supplier, the AI is continuously adjusting the score, what we call the match score, of how well the supplier matches against your specific criteria. And I think this is just like a different way of thinking about sourcing.
I'm gonna transfer that over to recruiting, but before I do that, do we need AI on the other side then as well? Because all of a sudden they're gonna get, instead of getting
So many emails,
10
right?
inquiries a month, they're gonna get 100, 1,000 inquiries a month, because all of a sudden AI can find them a lot more often. So they're gonna need an AI agent to provide the answers, right? Because
I
otherwise,
actually know a company doing the same thing as what we're doing for the factories. So you can imagine, when a factory provides a quote, they also have internal kind of quote templates and data that they have. Instead of having a human manually respond to each company, let's say they get an email from a buyer and it's from SourceReady, and there's obviously some requirements and specs. Then the factory in the future, I believe, their AI agent will look up their internal like quoting template or whatever information they have to respond to that buyer. And if there's information that the supplier needs to ask a human, I'm sure their AI agent, just like ours, will ask the human for confirmation before sending it. But I think this will actually increase business on both sides and actually democratize things. Like a lot of suppliers that traditionally didn't pay to be on Alibaba now suddenly are getting good inquiries coming in. And the same with the buyer. You're able to find a supplier that is really good, but just didn't pay money to be on Alibaba or these traditional directories.
yeah. And I remember in working in supply chain, right, we had those vendor registration forms. So when I worked
Yes.
at ABB, we had, I think it was called Achilles or something. And
Yep.
we sent that out to every vendor. Every vendor had to pay money to then register and basically be in that internal directory for us, where we paid a third party solution to basically keep our vendor data updated. And
Yep.
the vendor would complain to me and be like, I have 10 more of these third party solutions, all asking me to do the same thing. I have to pay money to all of them, and all of them need me to fill out this 20-page information here. And I always thought there needs to be a organization on the other side where the vendors only pay a company once, and then that company distributes and fills out all that information for them. It's kind of the same thing. It happens in recruiting too, right? And the amount of applications we're getting has just gone through the roof, right? And it's getting
Yeah.
harder and harder to
Yeah.
identify who's good, because everybody can use AI to write a cover letter, to tweak their resume, to make their resume kind of match the job description
Exactly.
on the recruiting side, right? And then you have companies who use AI to filter out candidates because they don't have certain keywords on their resume, right? So I think in recruiting, it actually creates a little bit of a downward spiral where everybody looks good on paper,
Yeah.
and everybody who doesn't look good on paper, AI filters out, and nobody actually gets to talk to the candidates anymore. We even have candidates who tell us, hey, my first round interview was with AI, where even nobody from the company showed up, and AI just asked them the question, then they had to talk to an AI, right?
Yep. Yep.
In the end, I think for something, there's a place for everything, right? And I think
Yes.
that first introduction step and just being able to know, okay, there is somebody out there I didn't even know existed, right? And I would have had to, they probably would have even never showed up on Google, right? If I Googled them
Yep.
before, I would have. But for on the recruiting side, I think it creates the headache that companies relying too heavily on AI in the end, right? And I know
Because
companies like Google,
you're trusting resumes, and resumes oftentimes are self-reported things.
they're self-reported, they're created by AI, right? So AI can
Exactly.
create a fantastic resume. So you have AI judging AI capabilities. And I know for Google, for example, for their software engineers, they're back to in-office interviews only, because obviously you can use AI to cheat as well. So I think for hiring and interviewing, because everybody can look good on paper, everybody can automate the application process, you can have a great looking cover letter, even if you wanted to. It's actually going to revert back to, you need to have those human to human interactions to filter
Agreed.
out who can actually deliver, who has the skills, who has the experience, and who doesn't just look good on paper. Because
So
all AI can do is go by the data it has, and the data is just not representative of a person's capabilities.
I agree. But I think there's a couple ways that we can think about this. So I think what AI, you're right in that I think AI has, unlike a human, it doesn't understand nuanced things, right? Like it takes a lot of things at face value. And as a result, a lot of things, they kind of overweight certain things and then underweight other things. I agree with that. But a lot of what AI also is able to do is look for signals that you otherwise would miss. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have a million candidates in the possibility of people that you want to hire. AI can look at, for example, this guy's job history and filter out the people that are constantly switching jobs. And AI could immediately say, this person, he's basically switching a job every 6 to 9 months. His average tenure is very short. This is a high risk signal. And you can't, unless the person is lying on the resume, like you can't really cheat on that, right? You can make your resume look better, but in reality, like the face of truth is, where did you work at? What did you do at those companies? And how long did you work there for? I think as a human recruiter, you can imagine if I were to give you a 1,000 resumes, a lot of times when you look at a resume, you also have the same signaling. Like when you see a person change their job every 6 months, you immediately like, okay, there's something wrong here. Like, why does he have 6 jobs in the past year? But there's a lot of not obvious signals that humans might miss that AI might be able to find from the resume signal. So I'll give an example. Like let's say this person, you want to find someone that with both an experience at a big company and a startup. Like let's say you want someone that's done 0 to 1 and 1 to 10, right? And this is where AI is very interesting because it could look at a large volume of resumes and say, okay, these are all the people that have worked both at Microsoft or let's say Walmart as a procurement, but they also join an early stage startup and help them scale their procurement or sourcing. And this person matches the profile. A human recruiter, you could do it as well, but you just can't do it at scale because it's a very specific signal you're trying to look for, right? Like, and a lot of times in recruiting, similar to sourcing, you
And
might have very, very.
I agree with you. I think we actually had a very successful blog post just this week about this one, where we were saying AI can't do it yet. And I agree with you, AI can't do it. It's just the ATS system, the applicant tracking systems that are
Yeah.
out there, and the AI tools that are out there, they don't have that capability where they can look up company background and information, right? And this is where we were saying, okay, if we know somebody has worked at a certain company, let's say Toyota, we know they have lean experience, we know they know continuous improvement because they
Yeah.
have worked at Toyota. The
Yep.
current ATS systems that are out there don't have that level of background information yet. They can absolutely rule out candidates that have job hopped every 9 months, 10 months, right? And I think it's good at sorting out. I think it's good at sorting candidates, right? It gives you I think AI can give you a good job of saying maybe cutting off the bottom 80%, right? That just obviously aren't a match. I think it's getting
Yep.
very difficult for AI to, and I've never seen it. That's LinkedIn Recruiter has rankings, and LinkedIn Recruiter has its own sourcing tool now, right? Where LinkedIn Recruiter has an AI sourcing agent. And here's what
Yep.
I will say. I would say if I let the AI sourcing agent run, I find out of 50 candidates it suggests, 20 are good. While I run my
Yep.
own searches out of 50 candidates I run with my filters, 10 are good. So I'm saying
Yeah.
AI can pre-sort candidates better than a general filter and increase my efficiency twofold. So instead
Yeah.
of having to go through 50 candidates and find 10, if AI does a sourcing for me with the parameters I give it to it, I find
Yeah.
20 out of 50, right? So it doubled my efficiency there. I think it very much
Exactly.
struggles at identifying the within the top 20%, actually identifying, okay, who is top 5%, top 10% within that.
There is a tool that you should look at called Juicebox, by the way. Just I think it's much better than LinkedIn Recruiter. Like everyone in Silicon Valley is using them to find people. But I know what you're saying, and I think what you're saying actually I think I can make a complementary example in sourcing. So like let's say you want to find a supplier that makes very premium quality materials. Now this is very subjective because every supplier will say that they can make
Exactly.
premium quality materials. But let's say you know that the supplier works with Lululemon or works with Alo Yoga. You know that they work with a brand that is known for quality materials. That is a signal right away that this is the supplier that has that capability, right? Just like you mentioned Toyota. If someone worked as a supply chain professional in Toyota, they probably got indoctrined with the lean approach. Same with suppliers. If you're a supplier for Lululemon, your Lululemon is gonna, even if you don't want to, Lululemon is gonna make sure that you can meet their bar for quality. So this is where like we get objective data sources. So I think slightly different than I think kind of recruiting. There is no universal global source of truth for what is real and what is fake. Like I can today fake my resume, and it's really hard to vet it until you're later down. Like there are tools that kind of do employment verification, but you're not going to do that at scale. You're only
Right.
going to do that at the final interview stages, right? But with sourcing, what's interesting is customs data is actually a data source that you can get that you can't lie about. And a lot of people don't even know that this data exists. Like you can literally find out where are people buying their products from, who are their suppliers, how much are they ordering, and you can look up, right? Like if I know this supplier, they do 70% of their business with Lululemon. That tells you so much about the supplier. And I think this is where AI could really take it to the next level. But then again, what you mentioned, I think AI will always lack the human intuition of being able to kind of sift out BS from what's good. And I think this is why like it's a tool. AI is a tool. It is not a human, or a person that can just do everything end to end. But I think in certain areas, it's going to 10x what you're able to do. And in other areas, I think you're always going to have to be in charge. But I think recruiting and actually sourcing, like if you think about the word sourcing, it's actually used both in recruiting and in supply chain, right? And I think this is sourcing is a category that AI I think is the best use case for, in my opinion, because it is a scenario where people don't like looking at thousands and thousands of profiles, and people don't like looking at thousands and thousands of supplier profiles.
Yeah, I agree. I think what I've run into not having used Juicebox is the imperfect information, right? Finding candidates that don't have updated LinkedIn profile where there's just not information for AI to
Yep.
work with and it skips them.
Yep.
So if
Yep.
I'm looking for
Exactly.
specific keywords or something and candidates don't have those specific keywords on their profile, a lot of the AI tools that I've seen them just flat out skips them and rejects them. And this is
Yep.
where I think human obviously not great at doing that at scale, but it is kind of where that detective work comes in as a recruiter, right? It's finding those candidates that are being missed otherwise. The passive candidates that aren't applying, that don't have updated LinkedIn profiles, where you just know, okay, how do you get in touch with them? How do you dig them up? How do you find them? And it becomes a fairly creative process
Yes.
that has a lot of intuition, a lot of experience and knowledge just from working with where you have to infer a lot of information, right? And I feel like a lot of times AI isn't great yet at making these leaps and jumps at it and inferring um, certain things. So that's where I think, right, this is where the sourcing portion comes in. But then I think in the end, and this is where it's different than I think in products, right? If you know you're shipping a product to Rolls Royce or to somebody, you can trust them that that they have high quality standards, right?
Yep.
With people it's different, right? You can work at a great company and still not be a high performer or still not have the right experience, right? It could be that you're part of projects but not leading those projects, right? So do you have
Yes.
the skills and experience to actually be running those projects on your own, or are you just taking directives and implementing things, right? So that's where I do think the personal recruiting or the human to human element to find that out and to ask follow-up questions and have deeper conversations is just something where AI still lacks today. And quite frankly, if AI gets to a point where it can do all of that, I think it might get scary on the amount of jobs it can take. I kind of prefer general AI intelligence to kind of plateau, and it looks like it has, right? From what I have seen, honestly, the jumps over the last year in ChatGPT and Gemini aren't huge anymore, and it's just more, it feels like it's about integration and getting that intelligence into as many different um, software solutions, or right, connect your email to your Slack to your Microsoft Office and whatnot, versus just AI getting better in itself.
Yep. No, 100%. I think you're 100% on point there. And I don't think AI will have the human intuition that will be there. I think it's just a tool. Just like Excel is a tool, just like every other tool, it's an automation tool. But automation does not mean, you don't require human intuition and human foresight. But I do think it will make people's jobs more enjoyable. A lot of these things that people
Yeah,
do at work, it's not enjoyable. Like no one likes sifting through things. Like it's better. I'd rather just tell AI, say, do the thing I don't want to do, and then and then if I don't like the result, I just tell the AI, like, no, this is not the right way to look at this. Do this instead. You
yeah,
kind of want AI to be imperfect to a certain extent, but at the same time, you also want it to make your jobs easier, right?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And right, we utilize it. I think it's great at recording conversations, spitting out summaries, creating for us candidate write ups, right? That used to be for every 45-minute interview, we would spend 30 to 40 minutes creating notes and creating
Yes.
write ups. That is down to 5 minutes now, right? Tops.
Yep.
And so certainly AI is gonna change a lot of things, but I think you're right, for the better, for the most part. I think it takes away those minuscule repetitive tasks that nobody really wants to do, and it gives you more time to spend time on value creation and yeah, making decisions, right? And I think that's the other part. I think companies are always going to be reluctant to give responsibilities and decision making power to AI, because if it goes
Of
wrong, who do you
course.
blame? AI? You can't say,
Exactly.
hey, we made a
Exactly.
decision, AI made the decision, blame.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is why I don't believe AI will never replace legal work. It will never replace these high stake work, accounting, legal, sourcing, recruiting. These are all like hiring the wrong person is a very big deal. Hiring the right person is also a very big deal. Finding the right supplier and negotiating the right price. These are all very high stake decisions that I just don't think it's realistic even in the next decade that this work will ever be replaced by AI. However, it could make someone that's already doing this job just do the job better, make them more efficient, make them more productive. And I do believe, however, that the people that are going to embrace these AI tools are
Oh
just
yeah,
going to be way more competitive than the ones that don't. So you can imagine, like today, if I were to say you can't use ChatGPT and I'm not allowing to use any AI tool, for someone that can, first of all, their job is just more enjoyable because their work is just easier. And second of all, they're going to outperform you because they can do just more work in less time. And I think this is the way to think about AI. It's a tool and a skill that I think people should learn how to use. And part of the skill of using AI is understanding the limitations of AI. I think that's the biggest skill of AI. Like, because you know AI is not perfect and you know that the results oftentimes are not good, the people that are really good at AI are going to know, okay, how do I fine tune the prompt so that the AI does what it's
That's
good at?
correct. Yeah.
And how do I, sift out BS from real? Because a lot of times the AI will make up stuff as well. And you have to have the eye to say, okay, that doesn't make any sense, right? And I
And then
think, yeah.
on that, I think a lot of the entry level roles are going to morph, right? A lot of people are saying, right, entry level roles are down. I think that there's going to be an adjusting period where entry level roles won't be the same entry level roles they used to be, right? It used to be data entry, minuscule task, right? You start early on with the stuff nobody wants to do. For a lot of people, that's how they get into supply chain, right? As a supply
Yeah,
chain analyst, logistics analyst, and that's. But I think those jobs are going to morph, and they're going to require heavy AI usage. And so instead of looking at the data, manipulating the data, it's going to be utilizing AI to do that for you. And I think we're going to have some new job titles coming up here in the next few years where companies realize, okay, we still need entry level candidates. We just don't need them to do what they used to do.
exactly. Exactly.
Well, I think this is a good point to kind of wrap it up for our listeners. If you want to tell them again where they can find you, where they can find SourceReady, go ahead.
Yeah, you can go to our website, sourceready.com. It is completely free to use. And if you want to connect with me, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Ricky Ho. You can type Ricky SourceReady. And yeah, thank you for inviting me to the show.